What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Bills Chat Live. I am Josh McCarty. With me tonight, in place of Luka, is Stokes. I'm sure you've seen him on this show many times before, including last week, Stokes, when I was taking my daughter to Friday Night SmackDown, which was just a very fun time. But how are you doing tonight, Stokes?
I'm doing great. It's Friday night. The weekend's here.
The weekend's here, which means we have a Bills game on the horizon. Up this week for the Bills are the New York Giants, the 1-4 New York Giants. And we're going to talk a little bit about how bad the Giants are. Are they just a product of playing very good teams so far, or are they as bad as that record would indicate? Spoiler alert, they're pretty bad. And some injuries on the Giants side, which has a familiar face making his return to Buffalo. And we will talk about that too. But Stokes, the very first topic I want to get into tonight is I don't want to go back and relive last week. I don't think a lot of fans do. But I do think it's important to kind of take the temperature on how we're feeling on this Bills team, because last week was a gut punch, not just because of what took place on the field. I think in a lot of ways that can be explained by outside factors, jet lag, travel, Jaguars are good, things like that. But the fact that the Bills lost two very important players, Matt Milano and Daquan Jones, followed up by a week where they already lost Tre'Davious White. All three of those players look to be gone for the rest of the season. Milano and Daquan Jones still have the opportunity to come back. Where is your confidence level right now with these Buffalo Bills, and how much of a hit did it take after last week?
Uh, I I guess I would say my confidence level is just unwavered after that game. I just think that no, you can't predict what happened in that game happening, like all of the injuries and everything, and the settings surrounding that game are not something that they're going to see anytime for the rest of the season. So it's just one of those situations where it's a one off, and you just got to chalk that up to, well, they didn't play well enough to win that game, so they didn't win the game. The defense did a lot. They carried the load in that specific game, and the offense just couldn't do what they needed to do for 3.5 quarters. And you just hope that that's not a running thing.
Yeah, and I'm not overall worried about the game, because when you look at it, the Bills punted 6 times last week, and in the previous 3 games combined, they punted 4 times. To me, there were a lot of things about that game that did not line up with how the Bills had looked the previous 3 weeks. So I don't want to sit here and try to quantify jet lag or travel or anything like that, or the emotion this team felt when they saw Daquan Jones and Matt Milano basically go off the field on the same play. We can't quantify that. But for me, I do think it's a worthwhile conversation of, okay, if we believed going into the Jaguars game that this was going to be an elite offense paired with an elite defense, which certainly would put this team in the championship conversation, what now can be expected of this defense? Do you think, as presently constructed, getting back Von Miller as they did last week, his role ramping up, how good can this defense be, Stokes? Are we still talking about a defense that could be a top 10 defense?
Absolutely, I think it's a big loss, losing Matt Milano. Like, I think we're going to see that loss much more than we're going to see in the Daquan Jones loss. I feel like, yeah, as you previously mentioned, Poona Ford is the guy that they brought in for a potential loss of Daquan Jones. So I don't think we're going to see as much of a drop off from that as far as his production. But you can't replace what Milano does. Like, he is incredible as far as figuring out how to make tackles, how to get the right angles. And one of the things that I see often enough in football is when a running back or runner is stuck in a pile and he starts churning his feet and the offensive line gets behind him, Matt Milano always picks up the runner's legs. And that's what I don't see enough of in football. Pick up the runner's legs. They're not going to be able to keep pushing him if you just pick up his legs. He'll just fall down. So that's something that I don't think I see anyone else but a guy like Matt Milano do. So I feel like the intangibles surrounding him, they're going to be a big loss. But as far as Terrell Bernard's been playing, like I don't know. He's been really good. So
It's been fun to see Terrell Bernard. Hello, Roy. Roy is always hanging out. We appreciate you, Roy, always choosing to spend your Friday nights with us. Nancy also with a comment earlier. We appreciate you. You're one of our regulars. We appreciate all of you who are taking time out of your Fridays to hang out with your friends at Bill's Chat. And Stokes, Tony Dungy once described Bob Sanders as the eraser in the Colts defense, where even if a play was drawn up and it didn't work and a run was about to break, Bob Sanders would erase that mistake because he was so good. In a lot of ways, I view Matt Milano as that for this defense. So the eraser is gone, but there still is plenty of talent. Will Dorian Williams and Tyrell Dodson be Matt Milano? No. But could they end up proving to be quality NFL starters? That is absolutely within the range of outcomes for both of those players. And if that happens and linebacker is not a weakness, I'm with you. This can be a top 10 defense. A team that will not finish in the top 10 rankings in anything you look at, Stokes, is on the docket this week, and it is the New York Giants. And holy cow, this game is like Buffalo Bills fan. This is your life. Their general manager is Joe Shane. Their head coach is Brian Daboll. And as of today, officially, their starting quarterback is Tyrod Taylor. And Stokes, I know you and I are both big Tyrod Taylor fans. Later in the show, we are going to talk about some Tyrod Taylor memories, where he ranks as far as Bills quarterbacks between Josh Allen and Jim Kelly. I want to have some fun with that because I think Tyrod Taylor often gets lost in the shuffle in Bills history. But just looking at this Giants team, Stokes, they're 1-4, so you can look at their record and tell they're not very good. But man, when you look under the hood, it may even be worse than that record. They have a negative 91 point differential, which is the worst in the league. Their one win, 1-4, was a game they were down 28 points at halftime. Offensively, they're 32nd in total points scored. For those of you keeping track at home, there's only 32 teams in the NFL, so they're dead last. They're 31 in total yards. And Daniel Jones, their quarterback up until this week, has been sacked 28 times in 5 games, which is the most in the NFL, trailing only Sam Howell, so second most in the NFL. And while we're talking about the offense, they're going to be missing their starting quarterback, Daniel Jones, 2 starting offensive linemen, including Andrew Thomas, who is a all-pro level player. And that is just on the offensive side, Stokes. I haven't even given the numbers on the defensive side of things yet, but this Giants team is bad on offense. They're bad on defense. They only have one player on defense that has a sack this season. You heard me right. 5 games in, only one player on this defense has a sack. It is Kayvon Thibodeau has 4, and there's 2 other players with a half of a sack. They don't get pressure on the quarterback. Their coverage is brutal. Adoree Jackson is having an awful season. On the other side, they have Deonte Banks, who's a rookie who is going through the rookie growing pains. Stokes, if the Bills were ever going to have a game to try out some things on defense, see how things fit on defense with some new players in the fold to get the bad taste of a game out of their mouth from last week, this Giants team might be the perfect team to serve up to them.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the prototypical get right games. Like this is one of those games you're going to play and you're going to come out of it like, wow, the Bills looked great. And that's why I'm excited for Sunday, because I know the Bills are going to crush them. And it'll be interesting to see what we take out of that game as far as whether there is something new or something new tried defensively. But because we know that McDermott understands that we don't have Milano for the next however long, and what we're going to do as far as figuring that out. But the only bad thing that I think that can come out of this is if there's more injuries or the game is close. If the game is close, I would be nervous because the Giants are just really bad. But we also know that the Bills have had the tendency in the past to play with their food, and we don't really want that in this situation. You're on mute.
Thank you, Stokes. Danny Smith says, if the Bills do not win their next 5 straight games, forget about the Super Bowl. I pulled up the schedule real quick because I wanted to make sure I had this right. I'm with you, Danny, on the next 3. They're double-digit favorites over the Giants, 2 touchdown favorites. They should absolutely smash the Patriots and New England. I think they're getting exposed as one of the worst teams in the league. Thursday Night Football against the Bucs, that should be a game that the Bills should absolutely feel like they can win. But the 4th game is a game in Cincinnati against the Bengals in prime time. I am not ready to say the Bills absolutely have to win that game. The Bengals looked like they were getting back into form last week, albeit against the Cardinals. but the fifth game is a game against the Broncos. So, Danny, I'll meet you about 4/5 of the way. They have to win the Broncos, the Giants, the Bucks, and the Patriots, and they have to look competitive against the Bengals. Hopefully, win that game. Anything less than 4 out of the next 5 would be very, very, very concerning. Josh Weaver with a question on Facebook. Thanks for hanging out tonight, Josh. How much of a threat are Daboll, Taylor, and Cole Beasley? Didn't even mention Cole Beasley. He got signed from the he got activated from injury reserve this week for the Giants, knowing they've been in Buffalo and have worked the offense. Stokes, that's an interesting point. I think we hear that a lot. We see it sometimes where Team X is playing the Bills this week, and they've signed Matt Barkley to their practice squad. He's going to tell them the playbook. And what I will say is Tyrod Taylor, I think anything he brings knowledge of Buffalo is pretty irrelevant at this point outside of knowing how the wind in the stadium blows because he was not here with Ken Dorsey. Cole Beasley, maybe a little bit. Brian Daboll, probably a lot. But at the end of the day, there's a saying, it's not just X's and O's, it's Jimmys and Joes. And the issue with this Giants team right now, Stokes, the Jimmys and Joes on paper just cannot keep up with what the Bills are going to put out there. So even if Brian Daboll has an idea of how to slow down Josh Allen, and he probably does as well as anybody in the sport, the fact that he has a defensive line that has one pass rusher that has a sack this year and a secondary that has a rookie in Banks and Adoree Jackson who's been getting torched this year, whatever he draws up, those are the players that have to go out there and execute it, and that's what's going to put Daboll a step behind.
Yeah, absolutely. What you could say if this is how they see the game, hey, Josh Allen doesn't like when there's pressure. Well, okay, you still got to have the guys that's going to provide that pressure. Or if it's like with Diggs, if corners are able to get up on him and they play him a certain way, blah, blah, blah. They still need the players that can execute that. So you can know what's coming. You still have to execute whatever it is that plan is. And I just don't think they have those guys. They have the quote unquote pedigree with some of those guys, but I just don't see it as far as that goes. So they can know the entire play script for the first 15 plays. It doesn't mean the Bills aren't going to score twice off of that.
Danny Smith, perfect storyline for the NFL. Daboll, Tyrod, and Beasley beat the Bills. Think about the gambling curve. Any of you out there that think that there is an NFL conspiracy theory, listen to Uncle Josh here. It doesn't exist. And if the Giants come in and beat the Bills on Sunday, it'll be a catastrophe. It's not going to happen. I'll tell you that right now. It's not going to happen. But if it does, it'll be a catastrophe. And there will certainly be a certain segment of fans are thinking, oh, of course, the NFL, the big bet NFL machine wanted the New York market with all the former Bills to win. No, that's not how it works. It's too hard to fix an NFL game. I appreciate where Danny's head's at there. TJ says 1 game at a time with all the injuries from London. Each game is going to be a little bit more difficult. A lot of depth in key parts of the offense and defense has been impacted. Stokes, let's talk about some of those depth issues the Bills are going through. And let's talk about the Bills injury report that came out today. There is some good news. Gregory Rousseau, who missed last week's game with a foot injury, which I was honestly concerned that could be a multi-week injury. He is not even listed with a game status on the injury report, which means the Bills expect him to play. Same for Shaq Lawson. So help is on the way. And boy, oh boy, did they need that in a big way last week, Stokes, as they were losing guys left and right. And by the end of the game, they had Kendall Vickers and Kingsley Jonathan rushing the passer on very important third downs. Kingsley Jonathan played very well, by the way. I just want to throw that out there. But we do have, and Christian Benford was full as well. No injury designation for him, so he should be back in the fold this week. But one cornerback is back. Another cornerback is very iffy. Dane Jackson did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday with a foot injury, got in a limited session on Friday. He's questionable for the game. My gut tells me he's probably on the doubtful side of questionable, so it's probably going to be a Kaiir Elam game again with Christian Benford. And one position that the Bills did not have issues with last week that now all of a sudden they have a cluster injury situation going at. Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox are both questionable for this game. Dawson Knox and Kincaid all got limited practices in on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. There were some shots of Dawson Knox with Josh Allen at the Sabres game last night, and you could see Dawson Knox had a brace on his hand. It is a hand injury, or they're labeling it as a wrist injury. And Dalton Kincaid is in the concussion protocol, which on Wednesday, when he got a limited session in, you're thinking, oh man, he's already pretty far ahead in the protocol. But by Friday, still only getting limited. It does make you wonder if he's not advancing as fast as they had hoped. Stokes, my mindset in this game, understanding the Bills lost last week, understanding how big of a catastrophe it would be if the Bills lose this game, my mindset is with this being a very bad Giants team, with this being a game that the Bills are 2 touchdown favorites in, and with this being an NFC game, I think the Bills should err on the side of caution. Anybody that's close should probably sit. Where do you fall on that?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think with a guy like Kincaid, if there's, I mean, obviously a lot of it's out of their hands completely, of course, with the independent neurologists that have to clear him to be able to play. But like, if there's a guy that's a little iffy, yeah, I would definitely think that Dane Jackson's not going to play. You don't want to put him out there if there's any risk of re-aggravating any sort of injury. So I don't think that they're going to play any guys that are close. But as you mentioned with the defensive line, a lot of things are pointing in the right direction because you get those guys back, and you have to imagine that Vaughn is going to have a few more plays that he can play this week. And we just hope that the defensive line will take a lot of pressure off of Kyer Elam. And that's the hope in my mind, is whether it's Elam, whether it's Benford, like if the defensive line is getting there, they're going to look a lot better anyways.
It's funny. There's a lot of talk about Christian McCaffrey. There's a lot of talk about Brock Purdy. Josh Allen was in the conversation for a while last week. It took a hit, but MVP, you could make a case that Andrew Thomas is the league's MVP just by the fact that he has gone away and an offense that was a playoff team last year can't even function without him. The offensive line for the Giants is brutal. We kind of knew going in that it might be a problem. They were relying on growth from second-year player Evan Neal, who did have a down rookie year, and then they were looking to start a rookie in Michael Schmitz they got in the draft. So there was certainly some clues out there that the Giants might be in trouble on the offensive line. But the 5 guys that are going to be in uniform for the Giants on Sunday, Stokes, Mark Glowinski and Marcus McKeithen at guard. You have Ben Bredesen at center. If you don't know these names, don't feel bad, folks. Most people don't either. You have Evan Neal at right tackle. He was a lottery pick for the Giants last year, but has not played to that standard. And then at left tackle, they have Joshua Izudu taking over for the very excellent Andrew Thomas. And just some numbers on these guys. So Izudu, who has not even played the full season, has already given up 5 sacks. Mark Lewinsky has given up 5 sacks. You have Evan Neal, who has only given up 1 sack, but he's gotten the quarterback hit 4 times and 21 hurries. So there's just, every week, if the goal is to find a weak link on the offensive line, it's pick one, anyone. And Daniel Jones, I think, is a victim of what's going on in front of him. He is not as bad as he's looked this year. Tyrod Taylor is going to be able to experience that this week. Saquon Barkley is coming back. That will have to help in some way because you have to respect it. But man, Stokes, I don't see any reason for the Bills to do anything tricky here. They can just play man on man up front and just make the Giants offensive line prove that they can block you.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you just let the pass rush go out and eat. And the thing about Tyrod is like he's not going to sit back and hold the ball and try and beat you deep. If he feels pressure, he's either gonna try and break the pocket, or he's going to throw the ball quickly. So if you play close, if you play man on man, if you just let the pass rush do what they're supposed to do, it'll end up working well for the Bills. So everything about this game is like, if the Bills are going to win by 30 points, like, and every single facet that you look at, the Bills are good, the Giants are bad. Bills are good, Giants are bad, and you look at all that, and it just makes you excited and also a little bit worried, because this is just one of those moments where it's like you end up looking at it Monday morning and you're like, wow, what the heck happened? But I don't think so. But there's somewhere in the recesses of my mind where I don't know.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, Costa's a friend of ours. He is a Giants fan. He's also a regular listener of this show. So, he's obviously not enjoying the season so far. We almost probably should have had him come on tonight and let us know what's been going on, because when you look at the Giants' weapons, Stokes, I see a lot of guys who specialize at certain things, but I don't see anybody who's like super well-rounded. Like Paris Campbell, I think, is a very fast, potentially deep threat receiver. I love Jalen Hyatt coming out of the draft. He was my wide receiver. I think I had him as my wide receiver 1 in this class. But at this point in time, there's still some polish needed there to prove he's more than just a deep threat, which I think he ultimately will be. We know Isaiah Hodgins is more of just like a big slot that can move the chains, but isn't going to do much for you. Same with guys like Sterling Shepard, who's just a little bit more of like a move the chains receiver, but they don't have that guy that can just do everything. Darren Waller was supposed to be that guy for them, but for whatever reason, they haven't been able to get him the ball. My uneducated guess, I say uneducated because I haven't watched a lot of Giants film, is when your offensive line is putrid, the tight end has to do that other side of the tight end job that isn't sexy in fantasy. He has to stay in and help protect. And that's what leads to him not getting the ball, catching the ball. And then Costa chimes in with Hyatt's just not seeing the field, which is mind-boggling and frustrating. So I don't think there's really, even if it's a Kaiir Elam game, Stokes, I don't see a weapon here that you're afraid of. Now, can Jalen Hyatt get him on a double move? Oh, you better believe he can, and he might. But that's only 7 points, and I expect the Bills to be in the high 30s. So that's where it's hard to find a path for the Bills losing this game. Okay, let's talk about. I also mentioned Darren Waller. He's questionable for this game. There's no guarantee that he plays in this game. So from that standpoint, I'm just having a hard time finding a path to a Giants victory. Stokes, if the Giants win on Sunday, what would that look like during those 3 hours? What would have to go wrong for the Bills for this game to end up being a Giants victory?
Josh Allen 3+ turnovers. That's the only way I can see the Bills losing this game. Like, they give them a bunch of short fields, and Saquon Barkley 150 total rushing and receiving with 2 touchdowns. Those are the only ways I can see the Bills losing. Like, you don't see a whole lot of Josh Allen 3 turnover games anymore, but like when he starts getting a little antsy, if he's not committed to what the plan is for a specific play, if you get them those turnovers and those extra possessions that you don't really want them to have, but that's where they can be a little bit susceptible to a loss.
Based on the temperature of chat, a lot of folks in here are overlooking the Giants. Everybody's talking about the next 6 games, the next 5 games. Our friend TJ chimes in. Fortunately, the next 6 games are all winnable with our current roster, even limiting the play of key people that are not 100%. We will absolutely need to be closer to 100%. Excuse me, once we play the Eagles. I agree with that, TJ. This is not the week that you need to force it. Costa mentions Kayvon Thibodeau is beginning to become the one we thought he could become. I would say we don't know how good Kayvon Thibodeau is because he's just not getting a lot of help on the defensive side of things. Now, Dexter Lawrence is excellent. Leonard Williams is a very good interior player, but there's nobody else rushing the passer right now consistently for the Giants. Ojulari's been up and down. He's not going to play in this game. And then at linebacker, Bobby Okariki's been a solid offseason addition for them, but they're playing. Isaiah Simmons is playing a lot of minutes for this defense. Xavier McKinney's a good player on the back end, but he's covering up for some cornerbacks that are having some issues right now. So I'm with you, Stokes, unless this is a situation which we have to admit is within the realm of possibilities where Sugar High Josh shows up. Maybe he wants to stick it to Brian Daboll, and instead of taking the profits we saw him take the last 4 weeks, he tries to go over top when it's not there, and then we see a carbon copy of the Jets game. If, it's under the lights, maybe Josh Allen's trying to put on a show. We kind of saw some of that last year against Aaron Rodgers in primetime, where the Bills get out to a big lead at halftime, and then Josh Allen inexplicably decided to go into go for broke mode instead of just getting that game to the garage, and it got much closer than it needed to be. So I that's kind of where my mind is at also. Let's talk about the Tyrod Taylor situation. Now, Stokes, we'll have a larger Tyrod Taylor conversation later, but at this point in time, fair or unfair, Daniel Jones has had a brutal season. He got the big contract this offseason. The Giants elected to, after making the playoffs, commit to Daniel Jones instead of doing what the Bills did with Tyrod Taylor, which is like, hey, thanks for coming. We kind of have seen your ceiling. Now let's see if we can do better. And that's where they found Josh Allen in the draft. To Daniel Jones' credit, he looked better last season than Tyrod Taylor had looked at any of his Bills seasons. Is it possible that Tyrod Taylor is an upgrade over Daniel Jones at this point?
I would say yes, potentially, because you would think that Tyrod Taylor processes things a little bit more quickly. Like he'll see, hey, I've got 1-2 read. If it's not there, okay, well, we're moving on, and we're not going to try and wait for anything. And like, there's a reason why Daniel Jones gets sacked as much as he gets sacked. So I think that I don't think he's a better quarterback, but for a situation like this where you can't really trust your offensive line, I feel like he would be a better fit for this particular game. And he has played in Buffalo. He understands all that encompasses that. So I don't think he's as likely to let the sounds affect him, or whether if it's a weather game, which I don't think it will be, but I don't think he'd let that affect him as much. So you would think that maybe he's well suited for a game like this, but I mean, in the end, he still has to have people to help him out, and we saw that when he was here. Like, he still needed players that can do things for him, and I don't think he's got all those weapons that you need.
And Costa chimes in, Tyrod's not an upgrade. And what I mean by that, Costa, is not necessarily that like apples to apples he's an upgrade, but I do think the things that make Tyrod Taylor a guy that sticks around the league as long as he has is because he almost takes checkdowns to a fault. And we saw numerous times in Buffalo where the Bills would be trailing by 40 and Tyrod would still be taking checkdowns. And then fans at the end of the season would say, hey, Tyrod only had 6 interceptions. And it's like, great, the Bills had 6 games where they didn't score a touchdown. So which one's more important? But maybe with the hand that Tyrod's being dealt with, having no offensive line, not a lot of weapons, maybe on 3rd and 10, instead of Daniel Jones trying to make a play, holding onto the ball too long and having a sack fumble, Tyrod checking it down to Saquon Barkley, punting and living to fight another day is the recipe to keep it close. I do want to talk about something Costa also brought up about the Bills blitzing. I'm trying to find the comment here, or I'm sorry, Wink Martindale blitzing. Here we go. Because we know that's his tendency dating all the way back to Baltimore. He's a blitz-heavy defensive coordinator. Josh Allen destroys the blitz. This season against the blitz, he has a quarterback rating of 115.9. So blitz him at your own risk, because he's also good when kept clean. He's also good when not blitzed. So you kind of have to pick your poison here. You have to almost design your blitzes. You have to hide them when they're coming. But again, for Wink Martindale, he's been a very successful coordinator in this league. Stokes, it's a whole lot different drawing up blitzes when you have Humphrey and Peters in Baltimore to protect you on the back end than when you have a rookie in Banks and a Dory Jackson not doing so well. So again, it's the Jimmies and Joes. I don't want to belabor this point. What I want to do a little bit earlier tonight than we normally do, Stokes, is I want to go ahead and get into our game predictions, because I do want to have a larger Tyrod Taylor conversation on the other side of this. So those of you hanging out in chat, this is the time where we want to hear what you think is going to go down in the Bills-Giants game on Sunday night. Is this going to be the bloodbath we all expect, or is this going to mirror the game we saw last night against the Broncos, where it was a one-score game, the Chiefs and the Broncos, that is? It was a one-score game until the late 4th quarter. We all have seen the NFL come up with surprising outcomes. It would not shock me if we get to the 4th quarter and this is a one-score game and we're all a little bit nervous. And we also know that Josh Allen has the ability to keep games close with turnovers. But let's get your predictions in chat. Stokes, I'm going to go to you first. Give me a score prediction. Last I checked, the Bills are 14.5-point favorites over these New York Giants. How do you see this one shaking out on Sunday night?
They're going to cover. I think it'll be an easy cover. It's going to be a game they win by 24 points, if not more than that. I'm calling 38-14. I think the Giants will find a couple drives here and there, but they don't have the offense to keep up. And when you have a secondary that's not good, when you have a second level that's not very good, and when you have a defensive line who really has one major threat as far as stopping the quarterback, like, all that is a recipe for they're going to give up a lot of points. And Tyrod may put together a couple drives. Saquon Barkley may do what he does because he's still one of the best running backs in the NFL. So there may be a couple drives where you see that, but it's not going to be enough. So I'm calling 38-14 around there.
My prediction for this game, and this is kind of an off-the-wall prediction, I think the Giants are going to score on their first drive. I think Brian Daboll is going to put a lot of thought into that scripted play, and they have not scored a first drive touchdown all year long. So I think the Giants will get the ball first. they'll go down and score, and boy, oh boy, seeing Tyrod Taylor throw a touchdown pass to Isaiah Hodgins in Buffalo will get people all riled up. And what is going on? Why is this carryover? We saw the same thing happen in the Raiders game, and then the Bills ended up shutting the door pretty quickly and reminding them who the better team is. I think Brian Daboll is an excellent coach. You don't win Coach of the Year not being an excellent coach. I think this team has been ravaged by injuries. I think the world is finding out just how important of a player Andrew Thomas is. And when he's out of the lineup, everything on this offensive line just really crumbles. But I do think the Giants will, Costa adds to my point, they haven't scored a first half TD. That's impressive on its own. I mean, you'd think you'd fall into one. I think they will come out early with the good game script. I do think that Tyrod Taylor gives them some options mobility-wise. Daniel Jones also mobile. But at the end, the Bills have too much talent. I think as long as the team plays within control, and honestly, for this game, the best thing to happen to the Bills is probably losing last week. Because had the Bills destroyed the Jaguars, I think we could be having the sandwich game conversation of, okay, they beat Jacksonville, they're coming back, maybe there's still some carryover jet lag, and they go to New England next week. And, the Giants are coming in with a backup quarterback and no left tackle. The Bills can just put it in cruise control. But they're 3-2, and this team is angry. And I think that the fact that the Bills have had to listen to the media jump off the bandwagon after so quickly jumping on after the big Miami game is going to have them motivated. That game left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Give me the Bills 41-13 in this game. I think this has avalanche potential. The Giants, unfortunately, are not built to play from behind. And I do think once the Bills get it rolling, it will be a snowball effect in this game. One more Bills topic before we get into our Tyrod Taylor discussion, Stokes. It happened again. Stefon Diggs, the national media making a big deal out of it. On First Take today, Shannon Sharp, they play a shot of Stefon Diggs throwing his iPad on the sideline. And Shannon Sharp went into this long rant about how Stefon Diggs continues to throw Josh Allen under the bus. Stefon Diggs is showing up Josh Allen. Don't show up your quarterback. Stokes, the biggest problem with that is Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs both spoke on that this week and both confirmed that the thing Diggs was mad about was he was mad at himself for getting a poor release on a route. And they don't mention that. It's he's mad at Josh Allen. Credit to Ryan Clark, who got on there and quickly shut it down and said he's more tired of seeing Stefon Diggs post-play reactions being focused on than he is of seeing the league focus on Taylor Swift. He was very clear in saying there's not a bigger cheerleader of Josh Allen than Stefon Diggs in this world, and we need to stop overreacting every time Stefon Diggs shows emotion because he's been showing emotion his entire career. Stokes, this storyline is not going to go away. In a lot of ways, it feels like the national media has already drawn a conclusion, and they're just trying to tell a story that gets to that conclusion without actually taking the details that are in front of them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy to connect those dots. Hey, the Bills lost. Hey, Stefon Diggs was mad. Clearly, he was mad at Josh Allen, and it's unfortunate as low hanging fruit. But I also think part of that is because debate is healthy, I guess, in many ways. But and also you don't really get that type of access to the locker room, so you can't immediately see it after the fact that hey, he's mad at this or he's mad at that. You can't see the iPad that he's looking at, so you have to glean that hey, he's mad and it's Josh Allen's fault just because he's a wide receiver, and that's what happens with the media, and that's what happens in a general sense. So I don't think that's going anywhere because no one, I would hope, would want Stefon Diggs to change the way he reacts. Like he is passionate. His passion is what makes him great at what he does. So I would hope that this is not something that they ever try and take out of him, because I think that takes away from him as a player. I think that drives him. So I want him to continue to be who he is, and we just have to accept it and take it with the fact that if he's mad and the Bills are losing, that's going to be a storyline. That is what it is, because I don't want that. I don't want Diggs or Allen to change the way they do things just because there's cameras on them.
Diggs and Allen need to do a sit-down interview together on a pregame show and squash this narrative. I mean, one of them was mic'd up in the Miami game, and they were like telling each other how much they loved each other, and they were doing like this hat trick dance because Diggs had 3 touchdowns, but that was somehow lost in the shuffle, and it's all because Diggs was mad. It must be about Josh Allen. Stokes, as I've gotten older and more experience of being a sports fan, there's just certain things that just rub me the wrong way that used to not bother me as much. Trying to read into body language when a camera catches a 5-second glimpse of somebody on the sideline. Like, you could have a camera on me during a Bills game. I'm not even playing. And there's probably things I do that I wouldn't want put out there publicly, like screaming, throwing stuff, throwing a pillow down, punching a pillow. You might think I have anger issues. Maybe I do. But I can't imagine what somebody who is pot committed, invested, and putting their career and their legacy on the line for everything that's going on in the field, they get caught in a moment slamming something down, and all of a sudden they're a bad teammate. And it's so tiring. And it's hypocritical because we used to see it a lot with Tom Brady where, oh, look at the fire, look at the passion, look how great Tom Brady is. Cam Newton does the same thing. And it's like, oh, Cam Newton, you can't win with a guy like that. He's too out of control. And it drives me nuts. Maybe someday in the offseason, we should do a show about things in sports that drive me nuts, because Steve Smith had one of those situations last night with Jerry Jeudy that just drove me insane. And he got so much credit for how he called out Jerry Jeudy. And I thought the whole thing was completely irresponsible of Steve Smith. But that's neither here nor there. All right, Stokes, let's get into Tyrod Taylor, because Tyrod Taylor was the last quarterback of the Bills drought. He was the quarterback that got the Bills over the hump and finally made the playoffs. He was, in my opinion, a breath of fresh air after quarterbacks that just could not even complete a forward pass. He came directly after the EJ Manuel era. We did have that basically 3/4 of a season with Kyle Orton, which was good, but then there were moments that just showed Kyle Orton was just here for a paycheck and did not care at all about putting his body on the line. Tyrod Taylor, where does he rank in your mind among the quarterbacks that played for the Bills between Josh Allen and Jim Kelly?
So he is either one A or 1B, however you want to. He is on the level with Ryan Fitzpatrick to me. So those two are the top guys between those two. Just because I loved watching Ryan Fitzpatrick, because you had no idea what you were going to see when he came out and played, because he knew he was going to go out there. He's going to try and make it fun. And Tyrod Taylor, to some extent, it was like the antithesis of that. It's like, oh, I'm not going to make it fun, but we're going to try to move these. We're going to try to move the chains, and that's what we're out there to do. But because of the way he played, he was very accurate with the football, and he didn't take a lot of chances. So I enjoyed that, because as a football fan, I was a lot more conservative as far as, like, how I feel about plays and all that. So that's what I liked about him, because he didn't put us in positions to lose games often, but he wasn't going to come back and win a lot of them. But I mean, I felt like that's where that's with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tyrod Taylor.
So I have what I think is considered a bit of a hot take, because I made a list from our Bills Chat podcast account back in June. I was ranking all the Bills players, like ranking the best wide receivers since Andre Reed, best running back since Thurman Thomas. And this list I made on June 28th that I did retweet to the timeline today. Top 10 Bills quarterbacks since Jim Kelly retired. Well, to the surprise of nobody, Stokes, number 1 was Josh Allen. I don't think I'm going to get a lot of pushback on that one. Number 2 was Tyrod Taylor. I ranked Tyrod Taylor ahead of Ryan Fitzpatrick, ahead of Doug Flutie, ahead of Drew Bledsoe. I contend that Tyrod Taylor is a more physically gifted Doug Flutie that just did not have the love affair with the fans because he didn't have his own cereal. I think we greatly misremember how good Doug Flutie was. You want to talk about quarterbacks that had the luxury of driving a nice car? Doug Flutie had a championship level defense, and he was throwing passes to Eric Moulds and Andre Reed. So Doug Flutie was out there, and he was better than Rob Johnson. So he was better than the prototype big money quarterback. So that obviously got him the underdog thing that fans love. But I think people remember Doug Flutie as being this great quarterback, where statistically speaking, the numbers kind of back up that he had one good season with the Bills. The league caught up to what he likes to do, And then he was really holding the team back. And I will still stand on the spot of the Bills made the right call in the playoff game, seeing what they had behind door number 2 and Rob Johnson, because they were not going to beat the greatest show on turf Rams in the Super Bowl with Doug Flutie scoring 14 points a game. Maybe Rob Johnson could be better. He was not. They lost because Rob Johnson was incompetent, but it was a worthwhile thing to do. But I think Drew Bledsoe's in the conversation. Unfortunately, he had a great first year in Buffalo, but that first game, the numbers were really built up in like the first 9 or 10 games. Then Belichick came to town and really gave the league the blueprint on how to slow down Drew Bledsoe, and he was atrocious after that. I think if I had one game to win and I had basically your average Bills drought team, I would land on Tyrod Taylor to be my quarterback from all those quarterbacks because, like you said, he managed the game. He wouldn't beat you with turnovers, but at least early in his career, you want to say before he got paid, he was putting his body on the line, 3rd and longs. There was a situation in Tennessee where he had the leg injury and he battled it out with a couple of long runs. He had a beautiful deep ball that Sammy Watkins was on the deep end of. Marquise Goodwin was on the deep end of. I would put Tyrod Taylor too. Now, look, we're not talking about Jim Kelly, Josh Allen. We're not talking about Dan Marino here. Like, this is not a luxurious list. But I thought Tyrod Taylor was a very fun quarterback. And looking back on it, Stokes, I know the Kyle Orton team had a chance to go to the playoffs. I certainly wanted them to. I think it's kind of cool that Tyrod Taylor is the quarterback that broke the drought because he was such a likable player. And the fact that that can be his legacy with Bills fans is pretty neat.
Yeah. And he came here. There was no expectation that he was going to be the Bills' franchise quarterback for as long as he was when he got here. So he came here on a low money deal, and then he made it work, and he got more money. So I think that's the type of thing that fans do love about players is, hey, they worked hard, they got an opportunity, they took advantage of the opportunity, and then they made the best of that situation. So I think aside from Fitzpatrick breaking the curse, or not breaking the curse, but getting through the drought,
Yeah.
I feel like Tyrod was the right option for it because the fans gravitate, or at least I'd hope they gravitate to a guy that he just waited for his opportunity and took advantage of it. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to see what he has left at this point in his career, and it's really cool to see him coming back to Buffalo. I know I'll be cheering for him to a certain extent, not to do too well, but I hope the fans cheer for him because he was really important to what we built.
Tyrod's legacy with New York Giants is not good. The quarterback who broke Eli's consecutive start streak. What? I thought that was Geno Smith. Wasn't that Geno Smith?
Maybe it might have been. I think so.
Tyrod hasn't been with the Giants that long. Costa?
Well,
come back to me, Costa. Come back to me. I don't think it was Tyrod.
Well, I mean, I guess we gotta trust him.
You're the Giants fan. I trust you, but I could have swore that was Geno Smith. Anyway, oh wait, Costa says I'm right. It is Geno Smith. Let me get that up there because I love being right. Look at me, go me. Okay. Favorite Tyrod Taylor memory, Stokes, and there were some good ones. I have a couple that stick out in my brain. Honestly, the first touchdown pass he threw to Percy Harvin was such a good memory because it was coming off of the EJ Manuel debacle where it was like, I believed in EJ. There was the game against Carolina where he brought him back, but then he kind of continued to prove that he was not an NFL caliber quarterback. And then Kyle Orton retires. And then you had this training camp battle between Tyrod Taylor, who was like this mystery box of unknown potential that if you played Madden, you liked Tyrod Taylor because he was one of the faster quarterbacks in the game. And then it was EJ Manuel and Matt Castle. And it's like, we knew what Matt Castle was at that point in time. We had a good feeling what EJ Manuel was, but Tyrod Taylor was this fun mystery box. And he certainly won the preseason, won us over then. But it was that first throw to Percy Harvin against the Colts, the beautiful deep ball that was like validation for me, where it was like, okay, this is what I've been believing in. And now I'm seeing it in real games against a very good Colts team. I believe that was the Andrew Luck Colts that the previous year had gone to the AFC Championship game before ultimately losing to the Patriots in Deflategate. And then my second one is actually going to be just a couple weeks later because they come back, they smash the Colts week 1, and we're thinking, oh man, this is great. We have a real team on our hands because Rex Ryan's running the defense, and that they're obviously going to be great. We learned pretty quickly that's not the case. And then they get beat by New England at home. Then they go to Miami, and Tyrod Taylor lights up the Dolphins in Miami during the drought. I don't have to tell you guys, the Bills did not win a lot of road games during the drought. To see them go down to Miami and just punish the Dolphins on the back of this fun new quarterback, those are the two moments that stick out to me, because I do think Stokes, much like most of these Bills quarterbacks, the longer the sample size was with Tyrod Taylor, the more I think we started to realize, okay, he's probably not the guy, but he's kind of fun. Those are the two that really stick out to me. Do you have a favorite Tyrod Taylor memory?
Yeah. So mine is the drive to win the game against the Titans, and like it's all the first year, because it's like you whisper, "Hey, could this black guy be our quarterback? Like he's pretty good," and like he makes defenses play with his, it makes defenses pay with his legs. So I mean, I remember that excitement of, hey, we landed a really good piece potentially in Tyrod Taylor. So that's what I remember mostly. Aside from the animated version of him in a video game, but like this one is like that first season, like all of it just seemed really cool. And although there were some downtimes, it just seemed a lot of fun. And the other memory that sticks with me is the playoff game against the Jags. Like it's not a great feeling, but it is a memory that is burned into my head. I was watching that game, and I was like, "Yo, you can throw the ball a little bit further down the field. You really can. I mean, they're not going to kill you." Like, and that is probably the memory that sears in my head most, is the watching that playoff game, because like after the drought, it's like, oh my gosh, it's playoff time, and then you watch the game and it's like, Lord have mercy, I just wasted my time watching this game because this dude did not throw the ball.
I remember so much about that drought scenario. I remember the Bills going to the airport and welcoming the Bills back after they broke their drought in Miami. And then there was obviously the Bengals game against the Ravens, Andy Dalton, Tyler Boyd. And the airport shot was incredible. And then the Bills fans went out to the airport. And this is in January, folks, in Buffalo, remind you. They're back at the airport again to send the Bills off to Jacksonville in the game. And then the Bills ultimately lose the game. And they still had an airport full of fans there just welcoming them back, the emotions. What a cool moment to break the drought. When I think of my time as being a Bills fan, the moments that I cheered the loudest, the moments that just, I will never forget how I felt. When Tyler Boyd catches that touchdown pass against the Ravens, that might still be number one, just because how desperate we were for a team to be in the playoffs and to see the Bills finally get there. Like, I could have cried that night. I really could have, because it just felt like, okay, they're going to get close, but the Ravens are favored. The Bengals have nothing to play for. The Bengals had a lead early, but the Ravens come back. And that right there, it's right up there. It's right up there with the Bills smashing the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. That was another one that was just like at that stage of their build. They weren't going to the playoffs every year at that point. They weren't, in prime time 5 times a year at that point. They weren't winning in Arrowhead like it was their job at that point. This was a team that, on Thanksgiving at Dallas was about as big of a spot if we had seen them in, and to smash Dallas in that spot. Oh man, I'll never forget how I felt that day. And then obviously the Patriot playoff game, the perfect game from Josh Allen. And then literally everything but the final 13 seconds in Arrowhead. I could have cried. Like I was so proud of our quarterback and our team. But I will remember a stand-up that the Buffalo News did after the Bills come back, and Jay Skursky is out there with Vic Carucci from the Buffalo News. And they're talking about like, where do the Bills go from here? They finally made the playoffs. What's next? And Jay Skursky, who's always been super connected to the Bills, was like, one thing I can tell you about Sean McDermott, as excited as Bills fans are to break the drought, as excited as he is to be the coach to break the drought, I promise you he is not content of being a 9-7 football coach that fizzles out in the first round of the playoffs. He saw the weakness on this team, and he is going to stop at nothing to upgrade quarterbacks. And everything they did that offseason proves that, with trading away guys like Cordy Glenn and Tyrod Taylor to get those draft picks to move up high enough to get Josh Allen. And it's kind of interesting to compare and contrast then what these Giants have done, where they also made the playoffs. They didn't have the long playoff drought. They won a playoff game with Daniel Jones, but then instead of being like, hey, thanks for coming, like now we're going to go on to this next phase where we try to dominate, we're going to run it back with the same group. Maybe that's a little bit of revisionist history because Andrew Thomas is out, and that certainly tanks a lot of stuff what they're trying to do on offense. But Stokes, when you look back at this Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott era, I think that was the launching point of like, hey, Tyrod, thank you for everything. We appreciate the hell out of you, but you can no longer stay here. We have to be better than this.
Yeah, I think that is a perfect way to put it. It's like, hey, we love what you did. We love how you embraced everything, but yeah, we know our ceiling, and this is not the ceiling we're comfortable with. So we have to go a different direction. And it's one of those situations where it's like, hey, it sucks that he can't be a part of this what this behemoth is now with the Bills, but it's he's still part of the story. Like the story, however it ends, when it does eventually end in the Super Bowl, the story of how the Bills became what eventual Super Bowl champions, it can't get told without Tyrod Taylor, and that's pretty cool.
It's incredibly cool. And there's a couple of players that predated Sean McDermott, where Robert Woods is a guy that his contract year was Rex Ryan's last year, so Sean McDermott really only had a couple of months in the building with him. I am convinced if Sean McDermott had a year to coach Robert Woods would have never gotten out of this building. Like, he is a Sean McDermott guy through and through. I am convinced that if Tyrod Taylor had not already gotten his big payday and was already at that backup quarterback stage of his career that he's been at really since leaving Buffalo, that he would have been a Sean McDermott backup for the rest of his career, because everything about his personality, everything about how he approaches the game, everything about his leadership is just Sean McDermott process through and through. It's why we love him as fans. It's why teammates loved him. And it's why, despite the fact that we're rooting for the Bills, who are wearing the all reds this weekend, we're going to be rooting for Tyrod Taylor to do well in his own right, as long as it does not include beating the Bills. No, Costa, we do not want to know your favorite Bills memory as a Giants fan. We can only guess what it is, but that is a good sign from Costa for us to move on from this Bills-Giants game, Stokes, because we, kind of like last week, have the entire slate open to us to watch. The Bills game was the first one, a game at 9:30 in the morning where we got to watch the rest of the NFL, albeit in a pretty bad mood. This week, we get to wait until Sunday night, so we have the entire NFL at our fingertips, kicking off with a Thursday night game that includes the Ravens and Thursday night game. Excuse me. I had the schedule pulled up and I had fumble fingered it in a London game with the Ravens and the Titans. But then I think there's a couple interesting 1:00 game slates here. I would have loved to see the Niners against the Browns with Deshaun Watson. We're not going to see that, so I don't think that's going to be a very good game. Colts Jaguars is interesting. The Colts are hanging on tough. I'm not sure that at this stage Gardner Minshew is really a downgrade over what we have seen out of Anthony Richardson, who is an athletic freak, but still, kind of rough around the edges. Very 2018-ish Josh Allen, I think. And then I'm also really intrigued by this Seahawks-Bengals game, because the Bengals looked really good last week. Are they back to being those Bengals? They will certainly be tested with the young cornerbacks they have in Seattle. Is there an early slate game that really stands out to you?
I would really like for the Bengals to lose as many games as they can. So I'm going to be posted out watching the Seattle game and hoping that they just win. I hope Geno Smith just finds his way to get the Seahawks another win, because I need or want the Bengals to lose as many as they can. Just because they make me nervous. They just make me very nervous, and I don't want Burrow to continue to heal. Well, I take that back. I don't want him to go back to last year's Joe.
You are a sick person, Stokes.
I want him to be the inconsistent player he had been the first 4 weeks.
I mean, it's a very real conversation. And, none of us are rooting for Joe Burrow's career to be over or this injury to be worse than it is. But the fact remains that if the Bengals are out of the way in the AFC, however that happens, that is certainly an easier path for the Bills, because don't look now, but the Miami Dolphins are a real threat. The Chiefs aren't going anywhere. The Jaguars just beat the Bills the second time in a row. And, on any given day, the Chargers can punch with anybody. So one less powerhouse in the AFC certainly would be welcomed. And Lamar Jackson is at least having a decent season, although they had a disappointing loss last week. Let's spin it forward to the 4:00 games here, as again, I have to scroll all the way down. You would think that at this point in my life, Stokes, I would know how to use a computer. Not so fast, but there's one game that stands out to me. And I know there's a quarterback in this game that you're a big fan of, Baker Mayfield. kind of reviving his career in Tampa Bay. And for what it's worth, they'll be wearing the creamsicle uniforms. I think that's fantastic. Against the Detroit Lions, who really are a story in the league at this point, the way that they are winning consistently. I think the world is finding out how good their offensive line is. They have wins in Arrowhead and Lambeau Field this season. Jared Goff has kind of been the perfect quarterback for what they ask out of their quarterback. Is that the game that catches your eye at 4:30 or 4:25?
Absolutely. That game is going to be really, really, really fun. Yeah, as you mentioned, I love Baker Mayfield. He was my favorite quarterback coming out of that class. I just loved how he carried himself and how fun he. It looks like he enjoyed the game, and like that would be infectious for a team. And he's in a position where I think that he's got a lot of guys that he can trust on the offense, like whether it's Godwin or whether it's Mike Evans or whether it's throwing the ball to White. Like he's in a really good situation, and I don't think the Buccaneers defense is going into the season. I thought that a lot of people felt like the Bucs would just be bad, and the defense is still that similar to the Super Bowl winning defense of just a couple years ago. So when you just take out Tom Brady, insert Baker Mayfield, it's not as far of a drop off as you thought.
So you mentioned you want to see the Bengals keep losing. There's another team I want to see keep losing, and it might surprise you, but it's the Jets, because we know what their defense can do. We've seen it firsthand against the Bills the last 3 times these teams have played. And until the trade deadline comes and goes, there will be this fear in my brain that the Jets are going to pull a rabbit out of their hat and find a quarterback to stabilize the ship. I am not believing in what I'm seeing from Zach Wilson, where he's getting a lot of credit for not just tanking the offense the last couple of weeks. I am not fearful of Zach Wilson, but I do think one of 2 things could happen. The Jets could make a move, whether it's for somebody like a Jameis Winston or a Kirk Cousins, or the reality is still out there that Aaron Rodgers could find his way back on this team come playoff time. And if they get competent quarterback play in the playoffs, nobody's going to want to see this team, especially with the way Breece Hall is running the ball. The Jets have a tall task this week. They welcome in the Philadelphia Eagles. DJ Reed has already been ruled out. They lost Elijah Vera Tucker for the entire season, which is just super unfortunate because he is such a talented player. And now this is his second season-ending injury, and just wonder what kind of trajectory his career is on at this point. But I mentioned DJ Reed. Sauce Gardner is also questionable for this game. And my goodness, if you were going to draw up a team that you wouldn't want both of your cornerbacks either out or hampered against, it might be these Eagles who can throw A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith at you. So go Eagles, fly. Let's try to get some losses in the Jets column. Do the Jets have a prayer this weekend?
I don't think so, but you think that the defense is going to be the only way they stay in that game. But I just don't think that offensively they're going to be able to. It's going to be similar to the situation with the Giants and the Bills. Like the Eagles' offense is just it's very smooth, and they can kill you running the ball, or they can kill you with their wide receivers. So it's really difficult to try and pinpoint how they're going to attack you. And if Sauce doesn't play, I would expect for Hurts to have 303 touchdowns. But if even if Sauce plays, like they're still going to put the Jets in situations where they can't really defend them how they need to be defended. I understand why the point spread is closer than it is with the Giants and Bills, but I think it'll be a similar result, and the Eagles are going to win this one comfortably.
I know you're a gambling guy, Stokes. If I were to set the over-under on 3.5 brotherly shoves in this game, what would you take?
I would take. I'll take the over, mainly because I saw them do it on like 3rd and 2, and they just did it twice. So they're like, because they can't stop it, so they just do it twice, and I can see it a couple more times. So yeah, I'm gonna call for the over, and it's crazy just how effective that thing is.
It is very effective, and I love how people are saying it's illegal, and then other teams are trying it and not succeeding. It's like, okay, well, maybe you should get the best offensive line in the league and one of the best running quarterbacks, and maybe you'd have more success with it. Maybe it shouldn't be illegal. Maybe they just have fantastic personnel in Philadelphia. Another AFC East team is in a very interesting spot this week. The New England Patriots, they have 1 win on the season, and they travel to Vegas to take on Josh McDaniels and the Las Vegas Raiders. And boy, oh boy, there's been a lot of chatter this week about how Bill Belichick has been exposed. They've been blown out the last 2 weeks. I think the volume is being turned up on the Brady carried that dynasty conversation. I don't think they're ever going to fire Bill Belichick, Stokes. I just feel like that's something that I don't foresee happening. I think it would very much be a conversation where they try to convince him to walk away. But I do think there will be some frustration in that building if they see Josh McDaniel and Jimmy Garoppolo destroy them, because that could have been their future. Now, granted, Bill Belichick was apparently in favor of Jimmy Garoppolo over Tom Brady, which caused the rift. But I think Robert Kraft, seeing Josh McDaniel, a coach that was groomed in his system, that was very much in line to be the guy after the guy, if they lose to him and it's embarrassing and the Raiders are not a great team, I do wonder what kind of pressure that puts on Robert Kraft.
Yeah. And I can see I can see there to be infinite hot seat level, because it wouldn't make any sense. Well, it would make sense for them to move on from Belichick, but I can't see them firing. Like it would be a situation where like this is the winningest head coach in football history. Like, you can't just fire him. It's got to be on his own terms. But I do not think the Patriots are going to lose this game. I feel like it's going to be one of those situations where Belichick is going to cook something up, and I mean, you can say that about an infinite number of games over the last couple years. Like, yeah, Belichick's going to cook up something, and then they get roasted again. But I think after these last 2 games, there's something has got to give, and I feel like this is going to be one of those situations where you're going to look back at this game, and it's going to be the Raiders scoring like 7 points, and it's like the Patriots are. Well, you can't say bad, because their ceiling is like 6 wins, if that.
I don't know where it comes from, because we talked about Jimmy's and Joe's versus X's and O's. They lost Matthew Judon. Hate to bring this up, Stokes. They lost Christian Gonzalez. I almost texted you last weekend, like, I'm sorry, your guy went down. But how do you overcome that? Those were 2 shining stars on their team. JC Jackson coming back doesn't move the needle for me at this point. I'm just not sure how Belichick gets it done, but this isn't a super difficult offense to stop. So I could see the Patriots squeaking out a win here. But I can hardly see any scenario where next week I'm nervous about the game in Foxborough, absent another couple major injuries for the Bills, which knock on whatever. And this week closes up with a very fun game, Stokes. The Cowboys going to LA to take on the Chargers. What do you make of the Cowboys after the blowout loss to the Niners last week? Is that just wrong place, wrong time, and they're still a good team? Or did we see some flaws that might start to be exploited by other teams?
I feel like the Cowboys are playing really different. I feel like they heard a lot of the Dak Prescott. There was a lot of interceptions talk last year, and then the offense has completely changed to not take a lot of chances. And whether it's getting into McCarthy's head, whether it's getting into Dak's head, all of the attention surrounding the Cowboys as a team is negatively affecting them. And I feel like that is showing in the way they're playing offense. And I don't know if there's something that can be done to change that mindset. But as long as they're continuing to do this type of thing, they're not going to be a real threat. I mean, the defense is still going to be really good. Obviously, they lost Trey Diggs, but Micah Parsons is still, he's one of one. But the offense, I don't think it's going to be enough to get them to make any sort of headway in the NFC if they're going to continue to be this conservative and really scared playing offense.
I really do feel like the NFC is 2 teams, the Eagles and the 49ers. I mean, a lot can change. It's only October 13th sitting here, but everybody else feels like a notch below. Maybe the Lions, honestly. I mean, their offensive line is going to keep them in a lot of games, and they play tough defense. So maybe I need to give them more respect. I think we'll learn a lot about the Lions this week in Tampa Bay in a tough road environment. We'll see what happens there. Stokes, are you back for pregame this week on Built in Buffalo Tailgate?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, I don't know what time we're going to be doing it, but yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Stay tuned to Built in Buffalo Twitter, and they will update you on what time that tailgate goes live. I will be live at halftime on the Built in Buffalo halftime show of Bills Giants, and then on our Bills chat channel, I will post a recap when the game goes final, about 10 minutes, just kind of wrap up the key takeaways and kind of set the table for the larger conversation between Luka and I that will drop Monday morning. Quick update on that. our guy Luka is attending the game on Sunday night. So while we normally record the games on or record the pod on Sunday night, that is not happening this time around. We are going to record it on Monday morning, but we will get it up on all of your podcast platforms and up on YouTube ASAP. We expect it to be there for you by the time you are eating lunch on Monday. And hopefully it is a happy episode filled with many good Bills thoughts and no injuries to chew on. And then Stokes and I will be back midweek with our quick hits, quick chat episode where we start to spin forward and talk about what's coming up the next week with the Bills taking on the Patriots. Stokes, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for tagging in as always for Luka.
Of course. Yeah, I love it. Love being here.
All right. Well, for Stokes, I am Josh McCarty, and we will see you guys next time next week on Bills Chat Live.